So Sarah Hawkins is here today as in her role as chair of the Minnesota Legislative Committee to help us understand the ramifications and the ins and outs of the ban on book bans, which I know is not what it's called. So Sarah, do you mind sharing that information with us?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. So, um, the bill was part of the Education Policy Omnibus Bill that passed on May 17th, was signed by Governor Walz on May 18th, and it became the law of the land immediately. And what it says is that this is quotes, a public library may not ban, remove, or otherwise restrict access to a book or other material based solely on its viewpoint or the messages, ideas, or opinion it conveys. And then in this statute, public not only means public library by our library definitions, but a public library, public or charter school library, or a public higher ed library. So libraries that receive at least half of its financial support from public funds. The library still has the ability to decline to purchase library materials legitimately based on practical reasons, including shelf space, price, ability to access, compliance with state and federal law, or quote, legitimate pedagogical concerns, including but not limited to the appropriate of potentially sensitive topics for the library's intended audience, or the likelihood of causing a material and substantial disruption of the work and discipline of the school. So really that last legitimate pedagogical concerns is primarily directed at the schools. From a school perspective, parents can still make curriculum content challenges under Section 120B. If you're in a school, you know what Section 120B is. For the rest of us, it doesn't apply. Generally, parents or guardians can still limit what their own child can access. Library staff cannot be disciplined or discriminated against by their employer for complying with this statute. The library still has to have a collection development policy for both the selection of materials and any reconsiderations or content challenges that they face. And that policy has to be administered by a professional librarian, which is defined as a licensed media specialist, an individual with a master's degree in library science, a professional librarian, or a person trained in library collection management. And then the last piece is any content challenges or requests for reconsideration have to be reported to the Minnesota Department of Education State Library Services. And all of this is, as Carol alluded to earlier, the ban on book bans. The statute is called the Access to Library Materials and Rights Protected. It is in Minnesota statute now as 134.51. If you spend a lot of time in Minnesota statute like I do, you know that chapter 134 is libraries. So this is 134.51, and it passed as part of the Education Policy Omnibus Bill, which is Senate File 3567. I can drop those links into chat later as well if you want to see the whole content of the full text of the bill. But just so you know, we worked hard on this bill with a lot of stakeholders. There's a lot of people involved in this conversation, the Minnesota Library Association and all of its the legislative committee members and their respective groups that they represent. CREPSLA, the Regional Public Library Systems Administrators. We had lots of conversations with State Library Services, Government Relations at MDE, with the folks who were carrying the bill especially in the House. Representative Cedric Frazier had a separate standalone bill that some of that got incorporated into this final bill in the conference. And one of the big things that came out of it was libraries all along said, we really want this to be stated in a positive light. We want to say something like, we're ensuring the right to read rather than the ban on book bans. So we're pretty pleased with the way it came out as the access to library materials and rights protected. That is the summary of what the bill says and what it does. And then, yeah, Carol, if you want to stop recording, we can have some more broader conversations about what, for example, how that's impacting Anoka County.
Sounds awesome. I'm going to go ahead and I am